Hi, welcome everybody to our webinar today. We're going to make a start. This is a session on next generation giving, which is brought to you by Community Foundation, Tyne and Northumberland, Essex Community Foundation, Hertfordshire Community Foundation and Northamptonshire Community Foundation. So we have an expert panel of speakers today from different parts of the country and different firms. So first of all, I would like to ask our panel members if you could introduce yourselves, if you could take yourselves off or put your videos on, that would be great. And we'll go around in order, probably alphabetical order. Let's do it by first name. So if we could start with Aaron, that would be great.
Hi, I'm Aaron Priest, and I used to be co-founder of Solo Press.
Dan?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dan Haylor. I'm a Lifecentered financial planner at TFP Financial Planning, based in Malden in Essex.
Thank you. Emma Riley? You're on mute, Emma.
Apologies. Hi, I'm Emma Riley. I'm a senior manager in PwC's Northern Private Business Private Client team. And I typically advise high net worth individuals and private and family offices on all things tax related.
Thank you.
I'm Emma Watson. I'm the head of financial planning at Rathbones, which is an investment management company with 16 offices around the country. We've got one of the largest charities investment teams in the country, and philanthropy is a huge part of what we talk to clients about.
Thank you, Emma. And Joel?
I'm Joel Newsom-Hubbard. I'm a solicitor at PwC working in our private client legal team. And amongst other things, we advise clients on setting up private charities and philanthropic strategy.
Thank you. And finally, Virginia.
Hello there. So I'm head of our charities team at Hewittson's. I'm a solicitor, and I spend most of my days setting up charities of all shapes and sizes for private individuals and others.
Thank you very much. So thank you to our panel for those intros. We'll be hearing from them very soon. Before that, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of why we're doing this webinar and to put it into some context. There are 46 community foundations across the UK which are part of a network, and we all work to grow giving and philanthropy and match generous people to important causes in our communities. Every year, we all award grants to hundreds of small charities in our respective areas. The generosity of people across the UK who have given to their local community foundation has helped to build an endowment for our communities that collectively totals nearly £693 million. And last year alone, £98 million worth of grants were awarded by community foundations across the country. Whilst each community foundation is an independent charity, we all know that growing giving and philanthropy is vital to try and meet the ever-changing needs of our communities and to support some of the most vulnerable people. We also know that the predicted greatest transfer of wealth in history is happening now and will continue over the next couple of decades from the baby boomers to the next generation. A key part of a community foundation's development work is connecting to and building strong relationships with professional advisors. Their clients could be our donors. So we are really keen to do whatever we can to help professional advisors have more conversations with their clients about giving. And we're going to start off today by hearing from Aaron, who's already introduced himself. He is a donor, and as somebody who has chosen to give at a younger age, it would be great, Aaron, if you could share your story of giving and your relationship with Essex Community Foundation.
Thank you. So I've been raising money for certain charities over about 20 years. I started raising money for a charity called Little Havens Hospice. And I used to raise money from cycling the French Alps and organising events for my old company, Solo Press, which I'm now retired from. The reason why I stopped donating to Little Havens Hospice is one day I took my giant cheque, awarded £4,000. I took it into their reception, and the lady behind the reception politely said to me, "Can you just stick it over there in the corner with the rest of them?" So I thought, okay, right, okay, all that hard work, all that fundraising, I thought I really want to start giving money to people that actually appreciate it. So weirdly enough, my company was in an awards ceremony, and I was sitting next to a lady we was on a winner's table, which was quite nice. And I was sat next to a lovely lady called Hilary Needham, who owns a charity and co-founds a charity called SNAP, which stands out for special needs and parents in Brentwood. So I was really inspired with the amount of people that she helped and all the children and parents that she's helped throughout the years. So I poured my efforts into raising money for them, and she kindly awarded me to be an ambassador for them. But I had this, unfortunately in 2014, I was in a cycling event over in Dengie, where triathletes, my one was just a cycling event, and we were cycling, I think it was about 50 or 60 miles. So I was in a team of a peloton, and I had a biking accident. I was in a straight peloton. We was traveling about 25 miles an hour, and I clipped the riders in front wheel because it was in a really big headwind, and I accidentally clipped the front wheel, threw me in the air, and I smashed all my bones down the right hand side, collarbone and all the ribs. That really did open my eyes up and made me realise that I was, not as invincible as I thought I once was, which led me going down the road to, after about 3 months, to be diagnosed with PTSD. I was really struggling to get back into work, really struggling to just socialise and everything. So I really did struggle. But lucky enough, I was seeing a therapist for about 1.5 years. She was fantastic. I accessed that therapist through my private health scheme and realised that not everybody's got that facility for a private health scheme. So it was about 7 years ago, the accident. So even back then, 7 years ago, it was a bit taboo subject to talk about if you was feeling not okay and, not yourself, So I decided then that's what I want to create my own charity to help people that are not as privileged to have a private health scheme that they can pull on, or that they may not be able to just talk to people. So I thought, right, okay, I want to start my own charity, or something to go along those lines. So I visited loads of charities and voluntary organisations, but they all wanted me to raise money for their organisations. And I realised that I wouldn't really have control of it. It would be for them and for their causes. So it was really just by chance that I was given Perry from the Essex Community Trust contact details. And we had our first meeting, and Perry made it sound so easy to start this charity without any of the headaches, that paperwork and everything else that would come in and would encumber starting a normal charity from scratch. Since then, the trust has been fantastic. They've really supported me and really helped me throughout the time. And I've only been really going for very, very short period of time. My foundation now has raised over £17,000. We're nearly there, but it's been really difficult through a pandemic to raise money. So once we come out of this, the fundraising will really start. And the foundation's now starting to get real traction. And I'm really overwhelmed by the support and the generosity of people giving to us as well. And that's really where we're at, really. So thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Aaron. That's great. Really interesting story. I'm always fascinated to hear people's stories about how they got to a point where where they're at the moment. It does lead us on really to that big question, which I think a couple of our speakers are going to talk around, Emma from Rathbones, Dan and Emma from PwC, which is, how do you raise the question of giving with clients? So we're really interested to get some good experience and nuggets of information here. So if we could start with Emma Watson, please.
Yeah, and it's all clients are different, which is why my job is great, is everybody is an individual. So for some clients, it's very obvious that charitable giving is a huge part of their life. So that's more a reactive conversations. So where a client has real clear charitable aims, our job really is to work with them to help them understand the best way of achieving that. If I think about a recent example, we had a client who's gifting from cash, but they also had investments that had lots of capital gains tax on. So one of the things we did was switch off the cash gifts, switch on the gifts of stock, because gifts to charity, there is no capital gains tax in there. So straight away, the client had shifted, they'd maintained their charitable giving, but it was part of their tax planning. Other clients where we have clients who have very high salaries or high pension income, which is taxed at source, so the tax is already taken in full by the time it hits their pocket. Their charitable giving in certain circumstances has led to a tax reclaim. So actually, because of the way tax bans work, if you make a gift to charity, it can lead to actually getting money back from the revenue. And in a couple of cases, this has led to further giving, which has then picked up the gift aid. So it's kind of supercharged the original gift that was made. So this is how tax planning can help. The other way that kind of we work with clients is to proactively raise it with them. So it's not really been part of their financial life so far. And usually this happens if we're doing what we call cash flow planning with a client. And lots of clients we do this for are in a wonderful position where over their projected lifespan, they have more money than they actually need for what they want to do. So where that happens, you tend to have quite a big tax bill at the end for inheritance tax, which many families are quite keen to avoid. So the conversation there with people who've got more money than they need is, what are you going to do about that? So you can spend more, which is a great thing to be able to say to people, but not everybody wants to spend more. Some people are, quite happy living as they are. They can take less investment risk, which, helps you sleep at night because you don't need to, make your money grow so fast. Or you can give it away. And if you give it away, who are you going to give it to? So you can give it to your family or friends, or you can give it to a charity, or a combination of that. So that's really us as financial planners proactively introducing the concept to clients and being able to advise them on the tax aspects there.
Thanks, Emma. Can I just ask a quick question on that? Does that conversation change depending on somebody's age, the client's age? Or does that not come into it?
The gifting conversation, or
the general conversation about when you're looking at the sort of the life planning, are you looking at the client thinking you're quite young, so I'm going to have a different conversation with you than I would with somebody who's 20, 30 years older?
generally, if somebody is sort of younger, they may have a younger family, so their priorities are different. They're usually about building up their assets and protecting their family should, the worst happen. If usually it's somebody who is maybe in their 50s or 60s, where you can actually start to get things in focus for what the third act of their life might look like. And you can start to say, okay, if things go to plan, then this is what your retirement looks like. If you live an expected lifespan, and we add on some years just to be cautious, then we can show them their position for their family, tax-wise, if they were to die, which is a really powerful way of kind of bringing it into focus. And I think Dan's going to talk a bit about those conversations with clients. But being able to do that, to actually show graphically what somebody's money looks like over their lifetime, it helps frame that conversation. So gifting may not have been something they've even thought about to their family or to a charity, because they always felt maybe they couldn't afford it, and this helps reassure them.
That's great, thank you. So yes, if we move on to Dan, I know you've got some thoughts on how you talk to your clients about giving.
Firstly, Aaron, thank you for sharing that. I'm a cyclist. I've had many scrapes, not as serious as yours, but understand how you feel. And I'm openly, hugely honest about some of my mental health challenges I've had in the past. So congratulations on what you're doing. It's awesome. Thank you. So look, I think one of the things that I learned, so life-centered financial planning is very different to financial advice. Yes, we give financial advice. Yes, we're independent. Yes, we're chartered, all of that technical stuff. But it starts with the client. And for me, raising the question of giving, I don't think that's the question. I think it's everybody that I ever meet irrespective of demographic or anything really. It's about aligning your money with purpose and asking people. One of the very first questions I ask anybody I work with, apart from kind of why are we talking today, that's probably the first question, but the second question is, why is money important to you? And I can spend 35, 40 minutes with someone just on that question, exploring the answers with you know, being curious about why these answers are coming out. And I can't think of anybody that hasn't got to a point where they are happier when their money is aligned with a purpose. And for a lot of people, that purpose comes from a place that they've experienced in their history. Yeah, money and is full of emotions. Yeah, our conversations on money are not through spreadsheets and pie charts. They're at the dinner table with our loved ones. So money is full of emotions. It comes from a backstory, and we have a history. And a lot of people, if you get the foundation right, it's not saying, you know, what causes what do you want to do, how do you want to give. It's understanding their purpose and fitting in their purpose. And Emma's right, building visual lifetime financial plans allows you to understand why money is important to them and how they can use their money to support their purpose. And then that's where the magic happens. And I see it light up in people. And I'm not talking zeros and zeros on funds. It doesn't have to be that, right? It's a purpose that's close to them. Their money is going to good use. And I mean, very quickly, I think the best way to explain this for me is it's when you align someone's capital, and I define people's capital as their time, money, energy, and talent, but time, money, and energy predominantly. That's everybody's capital. When you align that with what's truly important to them, if you kind of drew a Venn diagram in the middle bit, that's where the magic happens. That's where people's purpose comes out. So to me, that's how I do it. It's what I do anyway. Okay, it's every client. Why is money important? What's the purpose? What are we doing it for? And as Emma said, you go through that. And if you align people's money early on in their life, in their 40s, as they're planning new chapters, going through transitions, it's such a powerful thing. So yeah, that's how I would raise it. It's not a specific question. It's finding their true purpose.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Dan. Emma Riley, if we could ask you to share some thoughts on that as well, please.
Yeah, sure. And I think sort of echoing really and following on from Emma and Dan's comments, and I suspect there'll be similar themes throughout. In terms of raising the question of giving as a tax advisor, there's obviously going to be possible trigger events, for example, a liquidity event, or, you know, when considering their will. But I think actually it's important, just echoing what Emma's already said, that we don't necessarily wait for such an event to raise the topic of giving. And for wealthy clients, it is part of a wider agenda of ongoing discussions around their strategy for transfer of wealth, both to you know, the successive generations, but also in respect of gifts and their philanthropic strategy. And, you know, we all know it takes time for relationships to develop with clients, and over time you get to know your clients very well and what their personal aspirations and ambitions are. But I don't think we should be frightened about raising the topic of giving, because I think that in our experience, wealthy individuals are sort of turning to us to provide guidance on these matters, and they expect it to be part of the conversation with them. I mean, I'm speaking obviously as a tax advisor, and, you know, of course, clients want advice on taxation and the best vehicles for their giving. But I think giving isn't just about tax, you know, and there can be a misconception that people give to charity for tax breaks. I think, as Dan outlined, there's a much bigger, more important piece here, and people are motivated by lots of different things, as sort of Aaron's already outlined from a personal perspective. And, you know, coming back to the question of how you raise it, for me, it would be very unusual for this conversation to be tax-led. It's much more about what Dan said in terms of understanding what the client's objectives and needs and wants are, and developing that strategy, and then working out the framework in which they can give tax efficiently. So sort of, I guess by way of example of that, I'm working at the minute with an ongoing landed estate client, and we're considering a sort of wider strategic view of their business and family structures, which have got a load of trusts and things like that in there. But philanthropy is a really important part of those discussions and included in our scope on this piece of work, because we know that philanthropy, societal, environmental issues, and the impact that business has on the local community is a key part of that family's considerations for its legacy, and how they accommodate the transfer of wealth and that sense of stewardship. And the other thing, I guess, just to pull in the next gen piece, which is quite nice from this example, is that I think the charitable side, the philanthropy strategy, can be a good opportunity for the next generation to actually get involved, and to keep those conversations going. And with the best will in the world, in a family dynamic, you know, not everybody in the next generations coming through are going to necessarily be interested in the business or how that's got there or what the wider piece is. But potentially looking at giving and philanthropy can be a way for them to develop their and widen their skill set, but also start to take their own steps into the sort of stewardship of that family wealth into something that interests them.
That's great. Thank you, Emma. I'd just like to say at this point, if anyone's got any questions, please don't wait to post your questions. One's just appeared in the Q&A section. So just, yeah, pop your questions in there as and when they come into your head, and then we'll catch up with those at the end of this section. That, what Emma's just talked about, actually leads us nicely on to the next section, which is talking about if there are sort of what technical aspects might need to be considered and discussed with clients, especially younger clients. And we have Joel and Virginia who are going to talk around this subject. So Joel, we'll come to you first. You're on mute, Joel.
Apologies.
Sorry.
Someone was going to do it, and it was me, unfortunately. Thank you very much. So once we've raised the issue of giving and a client has decided that is something that they wish to do, we look to establish specifically what the client wants to achieve on their philanthropic journey and how to approach that in practice. And firstly, we look to define the causes that they want to support. We're seeing increasingly that clients are not just showing an interest in wealth accumulation, but also in wealth distribution. And we encourage them to think about this wealth distribution as they would think about their business. So what are they passionate about? What is the change they want to see in the world? And how can their knowledge and skills that they already have contribute to a better future? We also think about timeline. Perhaps traditionally people have come to setting up private charities a little later in life, and so are very much thinking about it as a tool of estate planning and of legacy. But we're beginning to see more and more clients approaching their charitable activities earlier, and so timelines can be a lot more varied. And finally, we consider who they wish to involve, whether this is primarily a family foundation or whether it will operate as an entity with employees, external advisors, partners, etc. Emma just spoke about clients finding that creating a charity can be a very effective way of empowering the next generation. It is a great way of getting the next generation involved in wider family business and interests. And we often see that, in fact, it is this next generation really driving the philanthropy agenda. And this extends more widely than just day-to-day charitable activities, but also to thinking about sustainability and environmentally conscious investments and behaviours. I've got a couple of examples that I wanted to share of making these sorts of considerations in practice. The first is an organisation called Tech She Can, for whom my team at PwC has been acting, and PwC more widely has been acting as an incubator for this, but it now wishes to become a charitable incorporated organisation. At the root of this charity are fantastic purposes around persuading girls into the male-dominated technology sector and improving tech skills amongst both young people and those looking for second careers as well. What's really interesting about this charity is that it's been formed out of a group of organisations, from banks, law firms to supermarkets, coming together to achieve something collectively, hoping to raise awareness of the issue of women in tech alongside effecting practical solutions. The key challenge for this client, and therefore for us, was creating a structure in which all the founding organisations feel that they are important stakeholders. and so really have a voice in the strategic direction of a charity, whilst making sure that the trustees remain ultimately responsible. And then my second example, in which trustees are also key, is a private charity we recently formed as a company limited by guarantee. I know Veronica's going to discuss some of these technical terms in the structures that I've described in a minute. But here, a young entrepreneur who had recently had a substantial liquidity event wanted to move their historic charitable activities from being undertaken by their company to a charity in their own name. And crucially, the significant majority of the charity's funding will come from the founder's company, which is paying their annual salary and bonus into the charity, along with making donations in kind, office space, staffing, resources. A key part of our application here to a charity commission was reassuring them of the independence between the company and the charity, and this informed the appointment of trustees to ensure that there is no conflict of interest at board level in either entity. This charity will exist largely as a grant-making charity, but is also going to undertake some charitable activities in its own right, including the purchase of property to be used as housing for victims of domestic violence. And the entrepreneur very much wanted to go down the route of setting up a private charity because he sees it as something existing long-term in tandem with their business activities and something that they can grow with their children in years to come. So there are a couple of moments when I sort of mentioned specific structures there, and I think Veronica wants to talk a little bit more about those.
Thanks, Joel. Before we move to Virginia on that, can I just ask you a question, Joel? In terms of the family, of the last example that you were talking about, and the children, are they, is there sort of the next generation of that already actively involved in the discussions and the thinking and the sort of planning around that, and so that the current your clients know or feel fairly certain that their charity is going to be passed down and looked after and be in safe hands by the next generation? Is that the case?
So it's not actually. This is a really young family. So the entrepreneur themselves is only a youngish man. So the children are sort of school age, primary school age. So it is certainly set up with that intention that it will become something that they actively are involved in, and who's to say what age that'll start.
That's great, thank you, very interesting.
Apologies, Virginia, for getting your name wrong.
That's all right. Yeah, so Virginia, yes, you want to talk now. Over to you.
Thank you. Such a lot of interesting points made there. It's difficult to know how to hone in on a particular thing. I think what is very encouraging is that there is an unstoppable desire, particularly in the last year, of people of all ages to want to continue and to grow their giving, and they're looking for ways that they can be helpful, not just now but in a solid ongoing sort of way. We've got a range of younger people who we've been talking to, and I'm just thinking about the last 12 months, and a couple of them are in the happy position of taking over really from their parents' family charities. And it's very interesting seeing how the dynamic there, and the sense of passing on and growth, and the sense of new opportunities. So younger people realizing the responsibility that they're taking on, but not wanting to just sit with the status quo, but actually being imaginative about perhaps changing slightly the way that things have been done. One client that I've been dealing with this week, wanting to actually go to the Charity Commission to make an application to change the objects, to widen the objects, to make them more dynamic, to try and be much more flexible in terms of the people that they're able to help. So we've got those sort of clients who are already, they're there, they've got something on their lap really, but they really want to drive it forward and broaden what they can do. And then we've got newer, younger clients coming through. We've got somebody who's got an amazing charity that he's set up, supporting the well-being of sports people. He's completely, his energy is unstoppable. I would say that you need a lot of energy to be successful if you're wanting to set up your own entity. So he's doing that, but so a key to it is that he's not on his own. He's able to link and bring together people who he knows, who might not want to be completely hands-on forever. But I think that's a really important thing, that if there's a younger person who's wanting to do something and set up their own entity and grow with it, they've got to feel that they're not on their own. They've got to be able to draw on the expertise of older people or, friends, family, whatever. Grow the energy around that one person. But talking about pros and cons, quite often when we have clients coming in thinking they want to set up a charity, we end up actually with them not setting up their own entity, but actually deciding that they can achieve the ends they want to by donating to existing projects, and that can be a really positive and exciting thing for them, because they don't have all the the ongoing bureaucracy and the needs to file things and accounting and the duties and responsibilities that come from being in charge of a charity and being a trustee yourself. Just being able to pick and choose a bit more without that ongoing commitment. So definitely one of the first things that I will talk about with a client who thinks that they want to set up a charity is, do you understand what's involved? This is an ongoing, really serious and significant commitment. These are the things you're going to have to do. This is what happens if you don't do them, before you even proceed. So, but trying to harness the enthusiasm and the passion for a particular project, but making sure that they don't saddle themselves with an ongoing entity if that isn't actually what they really want.
Great, thank you, Virginia. Yes, I think certainly we've got experience of people being referred to us as a community foundation who've had that conversation with one of their professional advisors, and they suddenly kind of go, oh, that's not the only route. Setting up a separate charity is not the only route for them. And for some people, it is the right thing, absolutely the right thing to do. For others, it's nice, I think, that there's other options out there. Gives them the involvement and the fun side of grant making and helping people and seeing how money's used without all of the sort of slightly dull, onerous responsibilities that sit with running your own charity. The next point that we're going to go to, which I think Dan and Aaron, I think, might want to come in on this. We asked a question, were there any specific life events that lend themselves to raising the question of giving? Just thinking about whether there are any of those really obvious triggers that could help professional advisors to sort of think, right, okay, this is my in now. And I'm not sure that we thought there were, so I'll let Dan and perhaps Aaron as well wants to come in on that afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, technically there are obvious events, right? I mean, technically people go through events, or they go through a retirement, although I hate the word retirement. It's such a dumb concept, and completely outdated. But people do this, they go through events. But for me, I just think, coming back to my first point, I think if we wait for specific events to happen, then we've missed an opportunity to educate the next generation. We've missed an opportunity to align people's money with their purpose earlier on. And I think we often see this, for me anyway, the barrier is you need to be wealthy to give, right? That's kind of the barrier. We'll wait till you retire, we'll wait till you've accumulated all of your money. And often people leave it too late, right? And because they wait for something to happen, they wait for their pot of assets to be a certain level. One of the things that I use, and I heard it a couple of years ago as a phrase, so I've stolen this, but it's something like, it's better to give with a warm hand rather than a cold. Better to give with a warm heart rather than a cold hand, right? So I think people just, if we wait for these events and wait for them, and without being too kind of forthright, I think it's a failing sometimes of what the financial advisory profession has brought. Industry has been previously. It's been a product-led, sales-led industry where these conversations, it's been a conversation around a product, and we haven't, they haven't delved in. And that foundation for me, knowing your client, delivering proper life-centered financial planning, where the relationship that I'm obsessed about is the client, not their money. I don't care how much money they've got. I care about aligning their money with their purpose. And wealth isn't a thing. And I think inspiring the next generation of people, and it is about that. There is a transfer going to happen, but the great thing about the Community Foundation is there's low barriers to entry. You can support causes that are close to your heart. You don't have to go into, as Aaron said, the rigmarole of setting up all of these, the paperwork that puts people off. But kind of helping people get financially independent and aligning their time and energy, low barriers to entry that are out there. I think it can really lend itself. We don't have to wait for these events to happen. That's old school. That's product-led, sales, commission-based advice that, in my eyes, can't go away soon enough. So don't wait for these events to happen. Explore the clients, have a relationship that's fully invested in the client and their family. And I've worked with a client that's doing this at the moment, setting up his charitable foundation that he wants his children, who are both, one's started university, one's just leaving school, to be absolutely submersed in something that's important to their family, so his legacy leaves on. He's in his early 50s, and I think that to me is the next generation that people are going to come through. They're independent enough to now make these decisions to kind of inspire their children and inspire local things is a big thing as well. So, we're waiting for these events to happen, but I think what the pandemic has definitely brought home is how attached we actually are to our local community, and how much we do value our local community. And I think people are going to be more wanting to support their local community than ever before. So I think I've probably not answered the question fully.
No, that's great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, Aaron, is anything that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'd like to agree with what Dan was saying. The good thing is what I've got on my time is I've got time, and I quite rightly say is that you want to give it with a warm heart, not a cold hand. And it seems to be apparent that when I'm talking to Perry, when I set this trust up, that lots and lots of trusts that have been set up are, unfortunately, they don't get to see the fruits of their labour, which is a real shame. And I'm 49. I was lucky enough to retire early. I sold my business in 2017, and but when I was working, I've had a financial advisor since I was 28, and I was so busy. We never had that conversation ever. It was always to do with tax planning and other bits and pieces. So if that is something for the future that you guys are going to do, I think that'd be welcomed. I'm sure you'll be able to help a lot more people. And I think that for my foundation in particular, I've started it just by helping my community, all the places I've worked, the places I've lived, and that's people have really connected with that. And because smaller charities don't get that support. Big charities like the ones that I've mentioned before about Little Havens Hospice, which is a great charity, but when people are just stick the check over there, they lose that sort of that communityness, But anyway, yeah, again, I'm not answering the question correctly anyway. But
can I just add one thing really quickly?
Yeah, of course you can.
Right. So, Aaron, you've mentioned time. We've mentioned all that stuff. And why I'm really passionate about this, because I see firsthand every day when you give people time and they align that time, and I'll keep using that, but give people the time, their energy levels, and I think Virginia, you said this, people's energy levels go through the roof when they find something that they're passionate and they're purposeful about. I've dealt with people that have spent a career on the corporate ladder for 30 odd years, and soon as they get this new purpose, this new their whole family dynamic changes and shifts, and a new energy comes out. And that's why we shouldn't leave it. If, as professional advisors, we are in some of the most privileged positions to get deep involved in our clients. If we leave it too late, we've done them a disservice, because we can make sure that that can be done throughout the period of their life. Because when you see it happen, it's life-changing for them and for me dealing with them, right? You can see the energy levels just go through the roof, and a new purpose. Yeah, so I'll start now.
And that's what you're saying. It's like, so my kids at the moment, that some of them they're doing mud runs when we could do mud runs, and that money. And my wife, we've got, since lockdown, we've got 10 chickens, 3 ducks. She sells eggs. We can't even get eggs on a Sunday because she's got a list of people she sells them to, and she's just constantly raising money for the foundation. So it's a whole family thing that we're all constantly, all we do is just every bit of effort, like you're saying, it goes into to funding this so we can get it to where we want to get it to. And I won't stop as well. Just because you have to get to a certain amount, I just want to keep going. So it will produce, one day I want it to produce £10,000, £15,000 a year going out to our local community.